Hey guys, and welcome to another Schematics update. This episode we want to talk a little bit about modding in Planet Coaster. And for that reason we have two guests here this time. First of all, it's Gregorburns. Hey man.
Hello.
And second of all, Mike Sheets and Seven, the one from Bro Coaster without demon spawn. Did I forget anything, Mike?
No, that's good. That's good. I don't have the demon spawn. That's right.
And I've got with me on the panel Fog and Freethebear. Hey guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey. So, Gregorburns, could you please introduce yourself for guys out there who don't know you?
Well, you may know me as the one who made the world's most boring toilet in Planet Coaster, and I am now modding the game, basically, spending a lot of my time trying to reverse engineer the file formats and make modding possible.
And that's exactly why you're here. And
yes.
Mike, why are you here?
I have opinions.
Wonderful.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's enough for us.
So where to start with modding? So it kind of appeared from maybe day one, at least from my opinion, modding was not something that Frontier wanted to go with initially. He wanted to kind of control what items actually got added into game and what kind of processes they actually had, just so that they could continue this art style and keep control of that. That's the impression that I've got from at least the lack of mod support initially. Mm-hmm. This has kind of raised questions from people who really would like to maybe see it one day. At least for the moment, I really like the limited kind of pieces that we have available because it does kind of inspire a new element of creativity. Not the other day I saw someone on Reddit sink ice cream cone into the ground and it made a really good planter. And this kind of creative problem solving, let's call it, is something that I personally find really interesting in creative based games. Mm-hmm. But what do you guys think about modding?
Well, I'm going to say something really probably not what you expect, is that when I play games, I don't use mods. I like everything to be clean, and for me that is everything being the assets the game came with, the way the game was designed. But strangely enough, I still have this interest in trying to mod the game so other people can do it. But I probably would never use it myself. So for me, it's a difficult thing to talk about because since it's not the kind of thing I use, I can't say if I would really like a game to have modding support or not. But what I do know is that technically it's something interesting for me, just not so much playing-wise.
Not to try and dissect your character, Gregor, but the impression is the enjoyment I get personally from finding creative problem-solving with pieces. You kind of have that on a coding background and saying, how can we make this do what we want?
Yes. I think you're right in saying that.
Just to kind of pick on that kind of coding, what coding languages do you use? And how did you find yourself into that kind of hobby, let's call it?
Well, primarily now I'm using C++. It gives me access to a lot of low-level things for dealing with the raw file data and that. I started back probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was about 12, 13, and I was writing Android applications, so that was mainly Java I was using back then. That's how I kind of started off. I would make these little stupid apps just for my own enjoyment. Never published anything, but just because it's something I was interested in, and I used to sit there and type things, and I got annoyed when things didn't work. But then when things do work, the satisfaction you get from it is quite amazing. So the same kind of thing applies to this, and of course I've changed languages because the Java, for anyone who knows, is not the best for doing something with files like that. But I've over the years moved on. I now do C++ mainly. Sometimes C#. C# is popular, but it's not the best choice for what I'm doing at the moment. But yeah, so that's basically my background. I've never been trained in any of this. It's just something I've picked up from enjoyment, and that enjoyment has come from just trying things, getting satisfaction out of it, and trying more things.
Sounds good, like for the right reasons. And now for the opinion.
Sorry, my mic was muted this entire time. I think that it is a necessary evil in modern simulation games. I think that the development resources aren't there enough to be able to do everything that people want, and so modding ends up being kind of a bridge for people's hopes and dreams in a simulation to be able to do what they want it to do. And sometimes it breaks the game, and sometimes it turns out to be really messy. If they implement it in the right way, I think they'll be fine in that regard. But it has the potential to be, pretty. I usually use Skylines as an example because Cities Skylines was modded or be able to be modded from the very beginning, and because of that, it makes it really difficult to play the game if you've stepped away from it at all. I don't want Planet Coaster to go that route, and so I'm kind of for modding, I'm kind of against modding.
Actually, very interesting that you brought up City Skylines, because I see a lot of people compare Planet Coaster to City Skylines and ask why City Skylines had mod support from day one, basically, and Planet Coaster doesn't. I don't know the reasons, and that's pure speculation, but could it be that City Skylines is based on Unity, which comes with modding support, and Planet Coaster is Cobra engine, so their own in-house engine, and they're kind of trying to protect their engine in some way?
Yeah, I think City Skylines went with Unity at the very beginning because of that, and I think that Frontier went the exact opposite way because of that. The only problem that we're seeing now that we're getting up to year one is that there really hasn't been a push for new content in terms of the development cycle, and it's unfortunate because that's what people need to keep playing the game. They need to feel like there's more coming.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you're right in saying Unity certainly makes it easier for the modding support, whereas with Frontier coming from there, obviously everything they've built is custom, built from the ground up, and I can tell that by some of the investigations I've been doing into it, and they've not taken the path to go down the modding route. But the thing is, and I've said this before on forums and whatnot, there will be tools available for them, for internal use, for them to make these objects and game assets, mods, whatever. But it's a kind of completely different thing from going down the route of making a public version of that, because in development they'll be using command prompt a lot, they'll not have user interfaces, anything like that. So it would be a case of probably spending a lot of time, a lot of development resources on making a system that would allow the stupid people, basically, which is us, not working in Frontier, to be able to make our own mods and stuff like that. So it's obvious it's a choice they've made at some point, and they've said we're going to do this instead of mod support, and it could be to keep the integrity of the game, to make everything that's built in the game is built in the game, since that seems to be something they're big on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely believe that. Planet Coaster is a very well-balanced game. If you run it on a potato, you're going to expect potato results. But if you run it on a fairly good system, or a system that it was designed for, this is the most stable game that I've seen in the modern era, honestly.
Yeah, I second that.
We talked a little bit about the lack of content and how it ruins, but also not ruins, creativity in the game, because right now you're kind of forced to misuse items for several purposes. And then there are people who said that modding will ruin creativity because you don't need to build a nice castle anymore, for example, but just have an asset designer or whatever you want to call it build it for you, and you plop it down in the game with one click. So I wonder, what's your opinion on that?
Big fat no to me. If you suck at something, you're going to continue to suck at something no matter the tool chest you get. If you don't have the creativity to be able to put those pieces together in a way that makes the vision that you want, then no matter what piece you have, it's not going to make a difference.
Also, to pick up on the way Fogg earlier mentioned the basic process of building right now, you start off by having an idea and you use pieces in a different way. But at least for myself, I often end up in, I really have no single piece for this way, for this idea I had. So basically, my creativity is limited, and having mods to make my own pieces would basically widen my spectrum of creativity, in my opinion.
I can empathize with that point of view. Don't get me wrong, I want as much content, as much kind of creativity possible via the most pieces ever. It's I come from a biased idea of I used to play games like Little Big Planet 1, Little Big Planet 2, which really are similar in ways that they didn't get many content updates, which meant we had to use things in creative ways to make, in this case, levels. This is kind of transcended into the way that I play Planet Coaster, where I either think up creative solutions to things or I see people who inspire me to make these. There was a guy on Reddit, I think it was Blizzle Whizzle. He used a track to make some kind of drain pipe system up a wall. And that recently inspired me to take an RMC and sink it below the ground to use a little bit of the catwalk as a fence.
Side note, that can't be good for the game to have that many inactive coasters as your fences.
It's probably not good for the game, but it works. That's kind of a large scale thing, where as opposed to I saw another guy on Reddit who actually used the candy canes to make some kind of stalk, and that has got me thinking, what if I could use that to make some kind of pattern for a fence or a railings? Now, that I feel is me kind of trying to creatively problem solve the lack of that piece in game, and I think if that piece was in game, I could quite literally place it, but it's the process for me that is the value in it, to be honest.
I can see your point, but I kind of disagree. Just imagine if you have, let's say, the piece you really want. Another person may use it for something completely different, basically like we are doing right now. I don't see an item as one item, but as potential 10 items. Or ways to use the same item. And I think that wouldn't ruin creativity, but engage it even more. It's not like you're sitting there and saying, oh, I need a fork in the game, so let's grab a 3D tool and build it real quick. It's not easy like that.
Very small cutlery pieces is what you...
It doesn't matter. It can be a massive piece as well. It's not like you're building that in 5 minutes and you have it in the game. Spoiler, Gregorburns will explain later why it's not that easy.
I'm not trying to be the person who says I don't want modding, because I come from a biased position of saying I want to earn the creative problems that I solve. I am willing to compromise that viewpoint to say there will be the possibility, if they introduce modding, of unlimited problems and unlimited pieces to solve them with.
Right. The problem is you have a certain amount of pieces right now, and you can figure out different ways to use those pieces. Once you start increasing the amount of pieces that you have and the bigger your tool chest is, not only does the game become more of a slog, but you become more complacent in the way you put your pieces together. And so you end up developing some like a cliche style that you wouldn't normally have if you had to make use of the pieces that you did have.
The limits are raised, and that means more creativity can kind of come out of that. Like if there was the opportunity for roller coasters to do even more, maybe that's a episode for the future, I think.
To pick up on Mike's argument again, I think there's already like you can see some builders already have a certain tendency to use some pieces, though. I think it's already taken place that some people just prefer using a certain set of pieces in the game already. Like you can see a building made by AdfoTV because it's bad.
Because it has windows and it crashes every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I think we're done here.
Oh.
So he's been moved to the naughty corner.
But no, yeah, I totally agree with you, Bear. If you know the style of the person, you can tell by a building who built it.
Yeah, I mean, that just comes about because you develop a style. But if you have so many choices that you become paralyzed because of choice, then you end up not using everything that you might think. Like, I didn't think that I was going to have any use for that freaking candy set, and actually it's something I use every time I use Planet Coaster.
It's interesting to me that you guys have talked about this idea of control of the image and control of this art style, because Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, which I'm unsure whether they were immediately for modding or whether that was something that they even considered, but that game almost had like a second wind, if you would, when people started putting custom scenery, custom roller coasters, custom flat rides, and just really going the extra mile as modding new content in. And it was quite in places disparate to the kind of theming and the art style and rules that Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 had. initially, but it did, I guess, keep more people coming back to that game to see what people in the community and forums are making. So what would you guys say to the idea more focusing on this art style?
It's a difficult one, but it comes down to what their thought process was in deciding about this. But in a way, I think that they have looked at the way RCT3, as you mentioned, people built on that. It gave the game new life. It got interesting again when mods were starting to be made. And I think they've looked at that and thought, let's see if we can do that again. And by not supporting it officially, it still opens up all of this availability to do that, but then they can still focus on keeping that controlled art style, keeping everything the way they want it to look. Mm-hmm. They could have easily stopped modding being possible. They could have encrypted the files. It's easily done. But clearly they are allowing it, and they've said this on their official forums. And it's like they're kind of wanting to branch it off to see what we can do while keeping their own art style, keeping everything controlled in the actual product itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Their art style is clear. They had a concept, they brought it through to their 3D, which sometimes doesn't happen, and they've been very successful in that way. When you get new people on that want to build assets, that want to add something to the game, it starts off pretty ugly, typically. But learn how to use the program because you make all of basically crap assets. Eventually you find a style yourself, and you will end up, if you keep going with it, you'll find your own visual kind of voice in your own objects.
I can kind of empathize and understand the process that people will take to kind of almost build their own style and use the options that they have available to them. Now, the question is, in a game that might not have many options, how hard is it to actually go about modding and making this custom content?
Well, it's incredibly difficult, I'll say that. For a lot of games, not so much. I mean, I've never delved into many games in the past because I just look at it and it's not interesting. The interesting thing to me with Planet Coaster when it comes to modding was that it is so technically difficult, and it gave me this urge to just keep going and trying things. And as soon as I made a lead on something, I was like, I can actually do it. To start with, I was thinking it's not possible. They've done something. It's not going to ever work. As soon as you make one small change that does something, or you work something out, you can keep going with it. But it is incredibly difficult. Just to give an example, it took me roughly 9 months before I managed to actually do anything that I could notice in the game. And the first thing I did was I didn't even change the texture. I removed the texture. And I removed Gulpy's texture, so he was just like literally a black shiny object. And that took me about 9 months to get to that stage. I'm not working full time on this, it's not a full time job, but it took me a long time, and a lot of headaches, and a lot of why is this not doing what I want it to? A lot of the game crashing all the time, But it's without having the tools to do it, it is difficult. Because I'm trying to reverse engineer a file format that I know nothing about. So if you're going into something like this, you're going in knowing nothing about how it works. If you've got a game that supports modding, you've got an API, or you've got whatever, they'll give you file builders and compilers and all that, and instructions on how to do things. But going into a game blind, or you've got nothing, it's like you're looking for a needle in a haystack, really, because you've got all these hex numbers in front of you, and you don't know what you're looking for.
It's a lot of problem solving, a lot of troubleshooting, and
yes.
Advo, sorry for ruining your format. I did see a Sedgeway, and I tried to take it.
Everyone's talking about we need modding and we want modding, but what actually do you want to be modded, or what can be modded?
Yeah, no, that's interesting to me as well, because I don't know what I want to be modded. I'm just here to work out how, not what. I'm not the creative mind here, so...
I think you might have the kind of situational knowledge potentially more than maybe a few of us put together.
Yeah.
If I was to kind of pose kind of an idea of like, what if we to maybe say, you mentioned earlier the Gulpy texture,
yes,
and actually managing to remove that, could we potentially see in some kind of capacity custom textures?
Yes, definitely. That's actually something I can do at the moment. So that's something I've been able to finally get sorted in the past couple of days, actually. So unfortunately, it's not something I can share yet, because I don't know how to do that without exposing things that shouldn't be. But I can say that I have done that, and I can swap textures. So yes, that's something that can be done.
The main thing is we don't want to get you in trouble. But maybe people listening are wondering why I want custom textures, and basing the argument that maybe billboards kind of solve that. Custom textures, if we were able to get them working in a modding capacity, we could maybe put them on items, we could maybe put them on even some of those primitive art shapes, so you could have maybe a circle that has a custom texture on it, and that is something at the moment which is not really possible on a smaller scale, or even a scale that the custom textures could add. That's just me mentally walking myself through that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the swapping textures would apply to basically anything in the game, you know, all the models. You're talking 3D textures. It's like, I mean, if you've seen these flat 2D mesh textures where everything's flattened out into a 2D surface, that's what you're looking at. So you can, you know, if you think about the texture for the janitor, for example, you've got his face on one part, his clothes and his broom, it's all on the same texture, and anything like that can be changed. So the art shapes could be changed, even the sky could be changed if you want to make it stars or something. That could probably be done. I did change the planet texture to Jupiter as well a while back on the home screen. That was a bit of a hack though, because I did that manually with the hex editor. So it was, but now I have actually got tools that are letting me do that for any object. So yes, that can definitely be done.
Another thing that you showed off on the forum is you were able to kind of remove all restrictions from track rights.
Yes. Now that's an interesting one. That was actually pretty easy because there are databases stored in there in a format called SQLite, which is basically it's an open source database format, and I found these just by scanning through the data. I found out how to extract it. You can open it in a tool that anyone can access, really downloaded from the web, and there's values in there basically. So the one I edited was for the Coney Express. I edited the values for maximum track, pitch, bank roll, set them all to infinity basically, and that let me build that coaster, or the looping steam train. And that looping steam train that I built is on my workshop, so anyone can download that and it works, but you can't edit it unless you've got the edited game file. But it is downloadable from the workshop.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, that's the basically classical aspect I think of when I think of modding in this sort of game style, is custom asset. Like we had it in RST3 that we had different sets, which were basically like, if you think of the Spooky DLC and all the building pieces, that is a set. That's what I'm hoping for the most, is being able to import custom assets with textures and all that stuff to make custom objects in this game.
That's probably what most people think of when we talk about the modding for this kind of game, and that's what I've been working on. I can say that the model format is extremely complex, and I'm going to say I'm a long way off working it out. But textures I've got sorted, so that's actually a pretty big thing in there. But what I need to get right, and I'm spending a lot of time on this, is trying to work out how 3D meshes are stored, and it's a proprietary format. It's all complicated, but I am working on that, and I will say now it will be possible at some point to import your own assets. But then there's a lot of other things I need to work out, like how do they link into the game. You know, it's not as simple as you just place another file in, because I tried that. Doesn't do anything. Game doesn't recognize it.
And we're talking about just static assets, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want them to move animations, it's going to be even more complicated.
Yeah.
On top of that, but it will be possible, and I'm confident saying that it is possible to import custom assets, but not yet, basically, unless someone else knows more than I do.
I'm a bit confused. I got a topic signed by Fog.
Yeah, sorry, I'll give it to N7. N7, read that.
All right. Okay. Good lord. What is the biggest hurdle you came across in modding Planet Coaster?
There's been a lot of hurdles. Let me think. That's a difficult question, actually.
I'm glad I asked it then.
The biggest hurdle's probably starting off, to be honest, because without any idea of what you're looking at, I mean, there's so many things I could do, so many things I could be trying, and just knowing where to start. And that would have taken me a long time. I can't remember now, but it took me a long time to actually even understand. I don't know how I had the patience to keep going. But once you found that first thing, like I said earlier, it gets easier from there, because you've got the motivation to keep going, because you know that it is possible to do what you're trying to achieve. I would say something that's probably not affected me so much yet, but a very big hurdle for me, is not so much in the modding itself, but how to go about sharing that, because people have noticed I've been very quiet on the forum lately about this, because there's things I can share, but I can't at the same time because I don't know if I'm allowed to. It's a lot of technical information, so it's difficult. And I can make as much progress as I like being able to mod stuff, but until I come up with a solution on how to share these mods without exposing all the details of how they work, how the game files work, that sort of thing, that's going to be difficult to share, and that's a big hurdle.
Yeah, honestly, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Yeah. Because it is so secretive, and it is so you need to be so masked so that you don't release or reveal things that are proprietary and are litigious to Frontier.
Well, exactly, yeah.
The idea of all this kind of maybe almost potential legal issues, do Frontier know of you and what you're doing?
They do, yes.
Okay, so have they kind of voiced or got in contact with you to let them know what they're thinking?
I have spoken face-to-face with a developer about this. I'm not going to say who it was. And basically, they're encouraging me, which is fine. I'll take that. If a developer tells me, oh, it's fine, you can share that, it's still a part of me says, no, I'm not going to do that because I could get in trouble. And I don't want that. But I want to try and make it. I want to try and be open as possible as I can be about the modding with everyone. But it's not an easy thing to do, like I mentioned. And of course, even though Frontier know, it's still something I need to probably get proper support from them. Yeah,
clearance.
Yeah, before anything can be done.
Yeah,
it's kind of like maybe an ethical grey area, even if they said they're happy for you to do what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
When you say they encourage you, do you think they would be fine if the community in general tried to basically break the game? And how can you maybe help the community?
Break the game?
Yeah, like not exposing the code, of course, but maybe giving them hints.
I have a good way to break the game. Try to move something with the advanced transform tool while it's saving.
Got him.
True.
Yeah, well, again, that's a difficult one because there's not very much I can... I can share things, but I've always got to be mindful of the fact I could share something that they don't want me to. So it's a really difficult thing, and I can see there's a lot of people wanting me to help them. There are a couple of people who have approached me who seem to have made good progress as well, and asking to compare notes, and that's all fine. But again, it all comes back down to this: how much can I share without getting in trouble? And I think Frontier are fine with it, but it is a difficult thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they don't want their trade secrets revealed.
Yeah, basically.
And even though that there isn't the crunch anymore, like with the 3 developers that were developing theme park games at the same time, it still could fall into, it's tricky. Anytime you're dealing with intellectual property, it's really, really tricky. Yeah, you got to be careful.
I can empathize from the point of view of the intellectual property. It's their unique selling point, this engine at the moment. Frontier Developments are making games with their in-house engine that they've potentially spent
a lot of money,
thousands of man-hours to make work.
Yes.
It's not like you're breaking Unity here, which is regarded as you can do whatever you want with it. This is something which explicitly hasn't been said, go for it, like completely clear.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm well aware of the fact that Elite Dangerous is using the same engine, and anything I make tools-wise, modding tools for Planet Coaster, could be used in that game, and of course, with it being multiplayer, it could give people advantages. It mess up a whole load of things, basically, with that other game, so there's conflict with that as well, if I was to do something, because I don't own Elite Dangerous, but from what I have gathered, many things in those files in that game are exactly the same. So any tools I make for Planet Coaster would work on that as well.
It could have potential hazardous repercussions after.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Modding would theoretically make things harder to share, at least on the workshop, right? Because the benefit PC has right now is that we can share whatever we want because everyone has the same thing. We have seen DLCs lately coming in there, but at least they handled that quite well. But how would DLCs work in that? Wouldn't that be a huge clash towards that?
Yeah. Basically, short answer, yes. It would cause problems with the workshop. And like I mentioned before, my looping steam train, that's available on the workshop. But when you download it, because I used a modified overlay file to make that happen, when I reverted that file back to its original, I could no longer edit the track on that ride, although it was still existed. Now, I haven't had a chance to test this obviously yet, but what I imagine the scenario would be if you imported a custom object by placing a custom overlay file in your install directory, uploading that to the workshop would probably work, but downloading it on the other end, you don't have a chance really. It would cause problems. So even a park with some tiny custom object or modified object in it would probably break the game, and maybe they have something in place to prevent that, I don't know, but from what I understand at the moment, yes, it would cause serious problems for the workshop.
So if I got you right, just to be clear, basically if I want to change the train you build, I have to break the game on my end as well to make it work.
Yes. If you wanted to change the train, yes, I would have to give you the modified file that I used so you could install it on your end. Yeah.
So basically that's the legal issue we have with making modding accessible to everyone.
Yes.
So what we need is something like an extra program or a built-in feature that could basically, if we would talk in the sense of we had different sets and assets on the workshop, they would work like DLCs. So you could set a tag to it, or it would automatically set a tag to a blueprint if it would use a certain set that is downloadable.
Yeah, that's the way of doing it. As long as, it would take this scenario, if I was to make a custom object, and what I would do is I would make a custom overlay file for it, which I put in my install directory. It's very similar to the way you did it in RCT3. Now, if you wanted to download that from the workshop, you would have to have the exact same file on your end, but that is not shared on the workshop. The workshop, basically, when you upload, it will have the name. So if you upload a park with an object in it, what the workshop sees is the name of that object. It doesn't actually take the details of what that object is and save it on the workshop. So there would have to be some separate way of sharing the mods, installing the mods, and then downloading things. So it would probably have to be a separate program, third party, because I could upload the overlay file I made for making that looping steam train, but that would probably be breaking a lot of terms of service because I'm effectively releasing a cracked version of the game files online. So
just to kind of play off the idea of you need additional files to, let's say, be able to use this or get the full experience, that kind of has been done in a way with the way that we need to share files for billboards.
Yes.
In ways I kind of heard it does turn people a little bit away from, just use the term, the hassle or the additional legwork they need to do to get the full experience of this item.
In SimCity 4, you had to have like whole packs of stuff so that you could actually do anything with the lots that you were downloading and stuff like that. Can't remember the exact name we used though, but it's similar.
It's the same principle anyway. Yeah.
So then you have to basically have a system that tracks your assets and your prop packs and all that sort of thing, and it's and
there is another complication with this which I've discovered as well. If you have modified game files in your game, as soon as Steam gives you an update, they all get wiped and you get the proper files back from the update.
Yeah.
So that's another hurdle as well to overcome with that.
So the only solution would be having a third-party tool that basically patches the game every time you play it.
Basically, yeah. Well, every time it updates, yeah.
Hopefully a nice quick topic just to, again, do around the houses just to get everyone's initial opinion on it. If modded or vanilla, what is the one piece you would want to see included in Planet Coaster?
Okay. The new tires that they gave us, I want to make those 20% smaller.
I think smaller arc shapes.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And I'm mainly saying that because it's probably going to be the first thing I make when I do a mod, because it'll be easy.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to ask, is that possible? Please, resizing art shapes.
Well,
Technically,
depends what you mean by resizing. If you mean resizing out with the game, yes, in terms of, extracting one, making it smaller, then reimporting it as a different object. But resizing in the game, that's not something that's probably going to be possible through modding, or probably even through development, because it is a difficult thing to do and keep a steady frame rate. It will cause performance issues.
I mean, I would have said the same, resizing art shapes and different shapes, but second to that, probably coaster sensors. Probably no one knows what that is.
No, coaster sensors, mainly used on block sections and relay information back.
Yeah.
It's niche, but it's something that would be kind of cool.
yeah, that's very niche.
Yep. Definitely.
Oh, blimey. So this is the problem. I posed the question, but there's there's not really a thing that jumps to mind as saying, I really need that right now. because of this random way that I play.
Yeah, scale doesn't really mean anything to you because you just make things bigger to make sure that you can get all the detail you need.
Yeah. Or I just use random things like rapids for rivers and roller coasters for fences. It's I'm gonna have to be that guy and just say I'm kind of content with the game at the moment.
Ugh, gross.
And I know.
And the next one is out.
By all means, it's a case that as a creator, I don't feel I've explored all of the possibilities. I haven't even explored all the potential themes, I feel. And that kind of offers me excitement to try and find those problems and then solve them, even with the level of pieces and the kind of stuff that we have now.
That's true. I barely even touch Spooky. I should probably look into that since I bought it.
So is that going to be next year? Next Halloween?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, guys, let's wrap this up. First of all, I want to thank Gregorburns for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And giving us the insight of what he does in modding and what he thinks is possible.
So yeah, dynamic water when? When's that going to happen?
I'll look into it.
We will send you a list later. And thanks N7 for
opinions. Woo!
And yeah, guys, thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or whatever it is, feel free to use our wonderful comment section. And see you next time. Bye.
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 Bye. And tell us what one piece you guys would want to see in the game.
Because you have no idea what you want to see.
Yeah, I don't know, but they might.
Oh, I like the game where it is right now. I'm at his British pants.
Right, cut.
Oh, alright.
Wonderful.
Can I stop this recording now?
Yeah.
Alright,
Yep.
wonderful.